Recording in progress.
It is 6 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I just want to remind everyone, this is the Design Review Board, and this is a regular Design Review Board meeting of the City of Milton. I am Ken Warlick. This is a 7-member board appointed by the City of Milton Mayor and City Council, created for the purpose of holding public hearings and making recommendations. The Design Review Board reviews plans and makes recommendations to the Community Development Director for the developments, except single-family residential, in the form-based code and overlay districts. In addition, the Design Review Board approves or denies demolition requests and makes recommendations to the Board of Zoning of Appeals on variances. So with that said, I would like to please ask everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank y'all very much. So to start off with our meeting tonight, I would like to introduce our city staff and board members.
Diana Wheeler,
Rima Abdel Fattah,
Samia Coker, Cheltenham Walk.
Ralph DeVio, Bethany Road.
Celeste Jackson, Saddle Springs Drive.
Ken Warlick, Hipworth Road.
Danielle Gagne, Morning Mountain Way,
David Jackson, Bethany Way.
And Danella, Haybridge Lane.
Great, thank you. So moving on, I would like to call for a motion or approval of tonight's agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion for approval and a second. All those in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. All right, next we'll move on to approval of the meeting minutes, from August 5th, 2025.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the DRB meeting from August 5th.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion for approval and a second. All those in favor? Aye, it's unanimous. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move tonight to, we have no demolition of structures, and we'll go straight to the point, which is 6A courtesy reviews, 12475 and 12505 Broadwell Road. The site is Hartwood, and we are looking at the site and landscape review only tonight.
good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Design Review Board. As you noted, Mr. Chairman, this evening's discussion is a courtesy review, which means that it's not final. The applicant is looking for some preliminary feedback and understands that we're just looking at the site tonight to get an understanding and an overview of what their project entails. The applicant is Daniel Kerr on behalf of Kimley Horn, and the property is located, there are actually two sites along Broadwell Road, comprising just a little over 7 acres. They're in two different zoning districts, T2 and T4, and as part of the Crabapple Form-Based Code, which is different and special, and it's particular to the Crabapple area. This is not citywide. These regulations only pertain to this specific area that we see here. You see the stars highlight the specific pieces of property. When we look a little closer, what we find is that the property to the rear, 12475 Broadwell Road, is zone T2. The only thing that's really being proposed for this property is the removal of 2 existing buildings and then the potential for a future planned road. This road is something that the city is trying to anticipate a need for, but at this point in time, it's not actually part of the project. It's just set aside as a placeholder in the future if it should be needed. What's most important to realize with this property is that there is a creek and wetlands and stream buffers that bisect the entire site. And so really the development is limited to just the front of the property along Broadwell Road. And what we have primarily are single-family homes in this area, and then we have townhomes. You can see the 3 single-family homes here, the townhomes here, and then an alley behind them with access for garages. There's a turnaround, and again, the limitation is by the stream buffer here in the back. All of these trees, for the most part, will be maintained, certainly everything within the buffer, and then there's a proposal for some additional trees, both along the rear of the property and also along the street frontage. This is just a preliminary view of what the houses may look like. Staff has already been in discussion with the applicant about some modifications to make it more in line with what the code requires for the form-based code in this particular area. And this is their preliminary grading and drainage plan, which shows you a lot of the work that's being proposed, especially along the creek, to try to level that site and create an area that can accommodate these townhomes and then the 3 single-family homes. Looking at the specimen of trees that is being proposed, primarily we have 4 types of trees: magnolias, the elm, the oak, and then the maples. The maples primarily along the street frontage. It's a continuation of the maple trees that are part of the street landscape further to what would be the left side of your screen for the other projects. Across the street we have oaks, but on this side are primarily maple trees. The light standards are called out in the code. What the applicant has submitted is some of it is not compliant. Most of you know that the Granville light fixture is what the code calls for, which is not this. And so the applicant has been advised that they're going to have to make some changes to their lighting where the Granville fixture is not specified. And these are the light standards in the code. As you can see, the Washington type or Granville is what's required. And so what we're recommending preliminarily to you this evening is that the plan can move forward. However, there are some changes that would have to be made, such as compliant lighting, and we know this. There may be some other things that you will call to the applicant's attention as well. And so what I'd like to do now is to ask Mr. Kerr to come forward and present his plan to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, board. Thank you, staff. My name is Daniel Kerr. I'm with Kimley Horn. We're the civil engineer on this project. I don't know if it makes sense to pull up the site plan. Maybe that's the easiest thing to start with. Oh, do I have to do it here? There we go. So as mentioned, so there's the 3 single-family lots on this side. These are the larger lots, but actually all the lots along Broadwell are single-family, and the townhomes are kind of behind those. And so, as mentioned, we have to stay out of the stream buffers. We're providing stormwater. We're providing, utilities, water, sewer, and this road. We're providing a portion of the road that is kind of on our side of the property, on the side of the property that's being developed, and providing a right-of-way for the future development of the road to continue. I did want to address the lights. We understand that we are deficient currently with our submittal, but we do have some updated lighting documents that we'd like to share to show that we are obviously wanting to be in compliance. So that is there we go. So that is the top. Posing as the bottom, and then here's an image of something similar that we will be proposing and submitting with the updated plans after the feedback we're given, and incorporate that as needed too. So that's really all I have to present, but obviously open for any questions or comments.
Great, thank you. Do we have any comments for the applicant or staff at this time?
The proposed road that's the future road that may or may not be built, that wouldn't be built in this project?
I'm sorry, say again?
The road that connects to the
Yes.
neighborhood in the back, that wouldn't be part of the project? It would just be a dedication to
It's a dedication. They would not be building the road. They only built a portion that goes through their developed portion of the site, and the remainder would be something to be done in the future if it will be done,
that the city would build?
that the city would build.
there a retention pond?
We're doing underground detention. It's back here and it's underneath kind of a common area that we're proposing over here.
Okay.
And then it discharges into the creek after it's been treated and, detained.
And what kind of trees did you have in the steep sloped area in the back? Would that be able to?
Magnolias.
Yeah, to be honest, I would have to look at the landscape plan. Because the landscape architect unfortunately was not able to make it tonight, but I can get that information for you.
Well, the plan is on the table there.
You said they're magnolias.
These are mags, I guess, and those are Ventus no or whatever. Oh, magnolias maybe.
You can't read it.
These are just buffers. This is in conflict.
No, yeah, those are just, sorry? Yeah, this one is. That would make sense.
This one, how do we know that there are? No, this is just.
No, there's some stuff there.
I didn't see it.
That's in
Existing.
yeah, UP2, there's a lace park now.
And Laura Maple.
So I have a question.
Sure.
What's the reasoning behind not having street parking along the front of Broadwell, like the houses across the street?
Well, I mean, obviously that would largely impact the site because as you can see, we're very constrained by the buffers and quite frankly, it would greatly impact mainly this area, I would say, that is the higher density area. And so, obviously that's not a requirement. So we're not providing it just due to the fact that it would basically push the entire site further back and limit our ability to, yield this density that we need.
Got it. So on these envelopes, these building envelopes for the single family homes that are abutting Hopewell Road, are you planning on, or eventually is the builder planning on utilizing all 69 foot by 54 foot?
So on the, you're talking about on the larger lots?
Mm-hmm.
No, that will not. That's just kind of a buildable area that's shaded there. I guess it would be up to, the builder as to whether or not they wanted to use all that. We're accounting for all that in our stormwater calculations if they were to.
Okay.
In case it's a driveway or something else that's impervious, but not necessarily.
Okay. What other questions do we have for?
I've got a question about the detention, where you've put it, and the future road and connecting to it.
Okay.
The entrance road, you come in the entrance road and you come to a dead end, correct?
In the interim,
As of right now, it's a dead end.
that's how it will be built. Correct.
But you have a retaining wall, which is holding up the road and a portion of the detention system, correct?
No, the detention system's actually all the way to the south, so it's actually not kind of being held up by the.
But you do have a retaining wall, correct?
We do have a retaining wall, correct.
So in the future, for the city to build that, they'd have to rip out the retaining wall, possibly impacting 19 and 20, to actually get a road in there?
Well, there are different ways that they could potentially build it, and that would be like a means and methods thing in the future. But I get where you're coming from. You want to kind of try and prevent any disturbance, I guess, to the homes.
And I'm getting more towards why you put the detention pond there and not over by the emergency turnaround. Because it
Right.
looks like on the grades on the landscape plan, if those are correct, it looks like you're doing a reverse crown and sending everything down here anyways.
So the stream flows to the south.
Correct.
And so the low point of the site is on the south side.
Right.
So we do have to butt grade a little bit. And that's in order to basically maintain, there's a step. So it's kind of like a drive under. So the front of the house that's addressing Broadwell is at one elevation. And then the driveway is actually kind of a floor lower, if that makes sense. So the back is actually a floor lower. And that's part of the reason that's buck and grade, is so that we could maintain, that look and feel from the back. The only other option really would be to have a separate detention system, because the units on the south side, which is to the right, it would be very difficult to get those to drain to the north due to the grades.
I can't really tell, but that back alley, is that draining to the north? The road grades.
So the alley kind of drains towards the main road. It all does kind of drain back towards the north, because that's how Broadwell Road falls. And so we're kind of paralleling it, but at a level lower. But in order to get it all to drain basically to an underground system, it kind of needs to, in order to have the system not be incredibly deep, we kind of had to have it all drain back to the south.
Okay.
What other questions?
I have a question about the lighting, the new lighting.
Sure.
Do you know what is currently across the street?
I don't believe there's any street lighting across the street currently. There are some Cobra heads attached to power poles on Broadwell, but
Okay.
they're actually on this side of the street. So they're on the east side of the street currently.
Okay. It looks like 4 in total. Am I counting?
Proposing 4 new, yeah. 4 new along the streetscape, correct. We have some internal lighting as well, but.
So all the homes on Broadwell are all single-family detached,
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
and the smaller lots on Broadwell, are those just going to be like 2 or 3 floors?
So I believe there are 2 stories from the Broadwell side.
They're like a split level drive.
Right.
Okay.
Right, that's right.
Okay.
What else?
Is there any type of lighting in the alley?
Yes, we do have lighting in the alley. Here's the photometrics. You can see the blue circles are lights within the alley.
I'd like to revisit Ralph's question
Okay.
about the retaining wall. So what will be the difference? What's the height of that retaining wall?
So the city's code does not allow, I believe, over 6 feet. So that's why you see such steep grades on the other side. I mean, they're manageable grades, but in fact, at one point when we first came through, we had tiered walls there, and the city does not allow that in the Broadwell form-based code, or in the Crabapple form-based code rather. So those walls are no higher than 6 feet exposed.
So it'll be 6, and then so that means it's going to be a 6-foot drop to where the city provided street would be, correct?
In the future, correct. So the city's street is, if you look at the plans that are currently, I don't know what percentage they are complete, but there is some preliminary plans. They basically are grading and filling in the creek and piping it. So it's not bridged or anything. So they would bring it all up to this elevation. This road was designed to meet basically that elevation as close as possible.
Do we have any other questions for the applicant?
I have a quick question. One thing I didn't notice was any sort of tree or privacy along the north side of the property, because there is an existing single-family home there. Is there any consideration for any kind of screening, or will it just be open?
We haven't shown anything, as you pointed out, but we can talk to the landscape architect and the team about that.
What about on the south side where it ends right there? Are there plans for that to continue? I felt like there was, in that initial plan.
Yeah, so that was also designed to provide interparcel access to the development that was recently constructed to the south. So that's the plan, is to tie into that.
What else? Good for now, maybe come back.
Probably.
I just, sorry, I have
Yeah,
one
go
more
ahead.
question. So there's no, I don't see any sidewalks for the alley or the drive. No connectivity between the houses, right?
So
Drive.
that's all like the back of house. The driveways, the garage rather, is in the back. So there's obviously a sidewalk along Broadwell Road. And then if you walk up, let's call it plan up, there's sidewalks on both sides of the new public road. And then it splits off because that's basically the front. The back, the east side of the townhomes is the front of the townhome. So that's where the sidewalk access is.
Good. All right, thank you. I think we're good for now. We'll, we may bring you back up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no more questions to the applicant, I will open up for public comment. I assume we do have some public comment. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that this project has been approved. We're strictly just looking at the site layout, the detention, the roads, the trees, and any other kind of architectural aspects to this development. And so that's essentially what this board is in charge of doing today is just a courtesy review to the developer, just to kind of add feedback. So with that being said, if there is feedback that you guys have according to the site plan, the layout, the trees and stuff like that, we would love to hear it. So I'll finish with that and open up public comment.
Okay, Mr. Sam Chambers.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you. I live at the property on the north side, 12555 Broadwell Road. And this is the first that I've heard that what was going on. And to be honest with you, I like the layout. I like having 3 homes next to my property rather than a bunch of townhomes. I like that. I would just like to see about making sure that we get some kind of a courtesy fence or something down through there. And also to make sure, because that water comes off that street and there's a lot of water coming down through there sometimes when it rains hard, that they make sure that they get the drainage correct so that that water doesn't come back on my property. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Okay. Stephen and Louise Scott. No comment? Okay, sorry. Mr. Ray Appen, he might want to speak about the, no? Okay. So no. Mr. Bob Kilmartin.
Good evening.
Evening. My name is Bob Kilmartin. I live at 1000 Cathedral Drive, the first house in Westminster, Crabapple, just south of this project. And I look for your knowledge on this since you're making recommendations, but when the property between our subdivision and this one was built and sat for quite some time as it was being built, the detention situation was also an underground and was not done properly and then sat for a long time. And what happened during all that time was that water came down and flooded at least 6 of the houses down in Westminster. And I have tons of video for you to see afterwards, whatever you like, literally 25, 30 feet up to the houses because we were getting all the water from the north. So what was happening was we met with a erosion control specialist back then, brought them out, walked the property, and then walked north. And because our neighbors were considering suing that builder because of all of the water coming down on us. Eventually that project got going again. They mucked out the drainage system. They made some adjustments. And so far, knock on wood, we haven't had too much issue. But with this much construction right onto that creek, if that drainage is not right, we're going to be facing another situation of possibly 8 to 10 homeowners forming a LLC to sue. Our neighborhood has had to do this before in other situations with that property next to us. So I would lean on you to really look at the drainage situation, because that water affects all of us south. And we were told then by this very large erosion control company that anything built north of us is going to direct more water unless it's very heavily considered. That creek is not built to take this much water coming off. So that's the main reason I'm here, and our neighbors will be involved in this in the future as it gets built. So I would just lean on your expertise to help really have whatever next board or whoever is doing this lean on the drainage situation, because that's going to really impact us. The last thing is I saw a picture briefly. Could they bring up a picture of the front from Broadwell Road? What it looks like?
I don't think we've seen,
I think that was just a
Yeah.
perspective or
Yeah.
typical.
I just want to know, the garages are on the back?
Yes,
So it
correct.
will mimic what's across the street,
That's correct. Yes,
correct?
sir. Mhm.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, and lastly, we have Mr. Hilbun.
Yeah, well, I'm Andy Holman. I live at 2140 Knightsbridge, and I was planning to say then, but Bob stole all my thunder here because I'm part of this group that he was talking about. But yeah, we live kind of further down, and the water, when it rains really hard, it started after they did all that up there. It comes up 2/3 of my backyard. I mean, it looks like the Chattahoochee River back there. I mean, there's all kind of things floating. It just covers the whole area back there. So we make sure these guys have a good water mitigation plan before they cut loose with anything up here. Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much. All right.
Okay, no further public comment.
Okay. Seeing no further, is there anyone else have any other comments? No? Go ahead, sir. Do you have a comment card? Okay. You're okay.
Mr. Clark.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Clark. I live at 12506 Broadwell Road, directly across the street from the smaller home that's to be demolished, apparently. Here in support of it, just a few quick questions that came up as I sat here. If I can look. Is it possible? So this plan here is no longer the plan that showed the parking lot on 12505? Is it possible to bring that up on the screen?
This is the only plan that was submitted to us.
That's to clarify. Because so now the plan is for this property here is to be all single-family homes. The first plat you all had up showed the parking lot, but that's no longer the plan, I understand. Understood. One of you asked about lighting. There is lighting along Broadwell directly across the street from that are not on poles. It's a specific type of lighting. My lovely helper wife just texted me a picture of it. So if you all need to see what the ones across the street are.
Do you mind, could you put it on the screen?
put it underneath
Will
that
that
lamp.
work if I-
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, just set it down.
Okay,
That's
Okay.
what
So same.
that's existing lighting.
okay.
I know that just to the northeast of this plot is a pond that exists that when I've seen previous hearings about the district at Mayfield, there was a lot of discussion about that pond being converted into a public park at some point. Is there any consideration of how that will interplay with this particular property since they essentially abut? Or is that going to be just totally separate?
Because it's a completely different project, they'll have to abide by the same stormwater, mitigation and qualifications that any kind of development, whether it's city-based or whether it's privately based. And so that entire drainage system and everything would be basically tied to that specific project, as this particular project has its own stormwater mitigation and detention system for this particular project.
Gotcha. Two last points. I'm certainly not an arborist. I know on our side in Crabapple Crossing, all the streets are tree lined and there's a particular type of trees. It sounds like there's a discussion of using different trees across the street. I don't know if there's a benefit to the community to having a uniform look as you drive down the road of having the same types of trees on both sides as opposed to an asymmetrical look. I'm not sure. And my last little point is, and this was probably beyond your purview, there's a lot of discussion about PTV access in the neighborhood here. I suspect that people who move into this neighborhood would love to be able to take golf carts and drive around. I think as presently the laws wouldn't allow them to cross Broadwell, so I would hope that the city could allow for those folks to have access across the road. Thanks, that's all I have.
Thank you so much. Okay. No further public comment?
No further public comment.
Okay. All right, seeing no further public comment, I will close public comment and open it up for a board discussion. Who wants to start?
You already answered one of my questions. I was going to ask, you did design the road as if it were going to be built when you designed your.
So what you're asking is he designed it to where it's just a tie-in
Where you
later?
design it and then you could just, chop it off so they can just come on.
Got it, okay.
So the intent was to design it as close as possible to the conceptual, I guess, continuation.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about for the city in the future, making it easy for them to.
That's right.
With
Yes.
infrastructure and everything already in place.
That's right. Yes, sir.
So they just connect right into
They
it.
connect right into
It's
it.
done, yeah. Okay.
So I'll ask, what are some of the stormwater mitigation things that y'all do as soon as you start development?
So there is a three-phase erosion control plan that's associated with the LDP. So it's kind of guidelines for the contractor to follow. And that's approved as a part of the LDP, at the design. So phase one is first they go in there, they put perimeter control up. I will come out personally, inspect it. That's basically kind of just silt fence and the initial, I guess, ponds. And then there's a phase two that's kind of while it's under construction. And a lot of that is, quite frankly, up to the contractor, right? To maintain that, they have their own certifications that are issued to them by the state. And it sounds like in this case, I don't know, I can't speak, but it may have been a construction issue as opposed to a final development issue, because if it's no longer happening, that's what it sounds like to me. So a lot of that is, quite frankly, up to the contractor. I'm not licensed to be out there every day to inspect that, but there are people who are. Typically, there's a 24-hour contact that should be posted on site, and if something happens, you should be able to call that contact, and they should come out. And if they're not, then they could theoretically get their license revoked. So that's a statewide law then.
Thank you.
What else?
Are there any types of requirements of the timeline? Because I think part of the issue that somebody mentioned was they started moving the earth and grading and doing things, and then it stopped. Do we know that there's any type of, or can we state anything about a timeline?
Well, I think to his point is, whether or not funding stops, the development stops or anything like that, technically by law, by state law, the contractor and or their qualified, personnel who essentially because they'll have to get MPDES monitoring, right? They'll have to submit to the state, because this project's more than 1 acre, they'll have to, have waterfall or water logs and all that stuff as far as rain. And then, all BMPs and all that stuff are supposed to remain and stay in, in working condition, right? So that would really be up to the city, if for some reason it became an issue, because there's ultimately the governing body of that, but then also the state could get involved as well, because it's, tertiary permittees and all this stuff. There's a long line of stuff that goes with that. So technically, yes, there should be monitoring in place, and there should be a responsible party for whether the development financing or paused or whatever. So,
and there are bonds that have to be
Bonds,
put in
correct.
place in case something like that happens as well.
yes, so stormwater maintenance bonds and stuff as well. So that very well could have been the situation with the other development, but that we don't know. So, any other questions for the applicant? No?
I'm just gonna throw this out there. I know this may not be feasible, but what if this last drain on the south side gets clogged? Is that, I mean, that's gonna cause the north side. That could cause some of the flooding, right? That these residents have already.
So
There's not, it doesn't look like, and I could be misreading, there's another drain that's 3 houses down. Can you add more drains there?
So what would happen is it would overtop the curb and go down into the creek if the drain's clogged. However, there are multiple drains along there, so it's not all going to one drain. So if that one drain clogs, it'll only be that area that is bypassing, if you will, the system. The rest of it would still be going to the detention system.
So the next one that I'm seeing is, I'm assuming that's a property line? 3 houses down, is that correct?
Yes, correct. It's on it's on that existing property line. That's correct.
All right, so the main road coming in is a public road, correct? But then the alleyways would be HOA, or those would be private alleyways?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So then those would essentially be tied to the HOA as far as maintenance for the drainage and all that stuff as well, for the drainage that comes down to the main public.
That's
right away,
correct.
Correct?
Yes.
So the city is responsible for the main street, right? The entry, let's just say.
Mhm.
And then the HOA would be responsible for the two private alleyways, correct?
That's right.
Okay. So that is something that we could recommend that, you know, with the, well, I guess it's already been approved, right? So there's no, we said, hey, the HOA, just make sure that they put something in the, you know, covenants or bylaws but they would already be responsible for that anyway, correct?
Well, they would be responsible for not just the outlets, but the detention system itself,
Correct.
all of it, and the roads above it.
Got it. Okay. So it would fall on the homeowners essentially at the HOA if that became clogged. Okay.
And my only concern is, I don't know, if on that slope. I'm not a arborist.
So they have, I don't know if it's in anything that we shared, but there are, actually it might be in, about how they plant the trees on the slope. They kind of like,
Are there details to make it more secure?
there are, yeah, I don't know that there are any particular.
The Magnolia facility for that location.
I can get those from the land architect and send them to you, like.
As far as the rear of the property, it is,
Is it?
once you kind of walk in, I mean, really, you're not seeing too much other than pretty heavy woods back there.
Farming for a year.
The trees.
Yeah, buying the trees. Pretty sure.
I'm not certain on that.
Yes, you do. Okay, what else? Any other thoughts, questions, concerns?
I like the idea about on the front, you know, where the roads are matching or imitating what we have. Since we're doing that with the lighting anyway, across the street, can we find out what those trees are? Because they may be the same already, I don't know. But if it's just a different type of maple, why not have that symmetry?
Yeah, I'll get some more information on that. I do know that on this side of the road, there are power lines. And so a lot of times with power lines, you're limited to a certain type of species of tree so that it doesn't obviously grow into the power lines. But I don't know what's on the other side, to be honest, of the road. But the landscape architect, he's usually very cognizant of those types of things, but I can confirm with him.
I feel pretty strongly that it should match lighting and tree. I think
Yeah.
drive down that road,
Yeah.
it would only benefit for it to look like it's a part of the existing community.
And it was planned, yeah.
That's like,
Sure, but something as closely similar.
Right, maybe a dwarf variety or something that might look the same.
So my really only concern is the parking, right? And I know that it meets code as far as the number of parking spaces that it currently has. I would just think as a homeowner looking to move into this community that to mimic that streetscape, to have at least the ability for the 13 single-family homes, which have a 3-foot driveway, to have some additional parking along the street. There's 69 feet essentially of building envelope, which if you times that by 2, and then imagine even these days, we're making them 3 stories now, which we're talking almost 9,000 square feet for a single family home for the 3 larger ones. The other ones will be a little bit over 4,500 square feet, 3 floors, right? Garage. So I think that, to me, I would like to see something like that explored. I'm not going to die on the sword for something like that, but I think it would even better replicate what's across the street, and then probably have less of an issue later on down the line for the end user. But that's more of my opinion than my comment, I guess I would say.
I'll point out that there are 6 kind of parallel spots internal to the development as well. So.
there are 6 spots?
Yeah, so there's
Oh, I see that.
there's actually 7 because there's one up that's by the mail kiosk for parking for handicap to get their mail for ADA to get their mail. But yeah, there's 3 on that main road that are parallel, and there's one over by the 3 more over by the larger lots.
Would there be a way to increase the width of that road going through the neighborhood?
The alley?
No, not the alley, that street, and the proposed street to do parking on that road? Maybe decrease the size of the sidewalks and increase the size of the road to add parking on the road?
Well, because it's public road, you've gotta match the right of way and everything. There probably is space to do that, but then you're killing your sidewalk. And it's already only a 5-foot sidewalk anyway.
I think you definitely don't want to decrease pedestrian connectivity. That's my opinion.
Got it.
The idea is for this essentially at some point just to be walkable, right?
Right, that's right. So you don't want to go away from that.
Gotcha.
So maybe a bike rack. So and golf carts are going to park wherever they want.
It's true.
Out of curiosity, where those 3 parallel spaces are next to 14, why didn't you make them 90 degrees and get more in there?
Well, so that's technically on somebody's lot also. But we were just trying to not, I guess, increase the impervious area. And originally those weren't in there, so we were just adding a few more. And we also didn't want it to feel like a parking lot, to be quite frank.
Well, the more impervious, the larger the storm detention too, right?
Yeah, but I mean, got space for it.
Pushing it up 5 more.
Yeah, I mean. Double it at least.
Yeah. So maybe that could be a comment to try to look at the site to accommodate additional parking, not concert parking, right? But
So that is the other concern. This isn't a gate.
It'd probably be an HOA thing, right?
yeah. I mean, that's semantics, right? You know,
Yeah,
that's-
I know, I'm just thinking.
So, yeah, I think, what do we have? I think second check, or just at the storm, just make sure that we've got everything adequate. if there's a capability to add a manhole with an additional drain but that's not gonna take on more volume. You know, the pipe is the size of the pipe's the size of the pipe, bless you.
Or for if something gets.
Yeah, fair. Okay. Okay, thank you. Any more questions for him? No? Okay. So let's talk about then what kind of recommendations for this courtesy review that we would like to, I guess, see when it comes back through for the final. You wanted some about the trees on the slope, or?
I think well, it sounds like they have, but maybe just for them to review it. Going to sustain that slope.
Okay.
But then also, we talked about the trees across the street.
And lighting, I think.
Well, I think from the new one that they proposed,
The right one.
But in
Matches.
terms of spacing and, you know,
Ah,
just
got
make
it,
sure
got it.
that
Some
both
sort
sides of the
natural-
road, you know, mimic each other.
And on the north side of this, where somebody else has an existing home, is there anything there?
No. He
Yeah,
said there's
so
currently
the-
nothing. So I had said,
Is there room to have anything screening material?
so I do think that there is room for some, you know, even some pencils or something like that. I'd like to see maybe a illustration or a drawing of that side. The other thing too is I think when they come back with, when we actually do the building review, I think that's something that we would probably focus on. It's like, what does the side of that building look like, right? Because we do have that home, existing home there. When we're driving down Broadwell, are we just going to see 3 stories, which I don't think Bob's going to allow that anyway, but are we going to see just 3 stories of a flat, plain building, or are we going to have some depth and some stuff like that? And then a couple trees and stuff like that to kind of fit in that area. And I think also too, is so maybe have a view of the north facing in and then the south facing in as well, right? Just to kind of see what that would look like. Buffer north-south vegetation.
I don't think it needs to be like a living fence where it's
No.
just, you know, but
Just to
something
break
that
up the
looks
plane of a, yes.
very organic looking.
Mhm. Okay,
Right.
so just, trees on slope, trees and light, spacing mimic across the street, buffer north and south vegetation. And then detention, we wanted to just explore. Volume. Okay. Now I'm going to free parking, just because I'd love to.
Yeah.
I just
And
feel
I
like
agree, it's on the-
69 feet, you could move that down to 60 feet. Your front porch can still encroach over that front building setback, I believe, a little bit. And then that may give you enough room. Power lines may be an issue.
Sure.
But
But it would
You
mimic
can go underground.
the other side of the street. Since there is parking already, it would look.
It would be offset.
Well, that's a good point then. Did we see, there's no kind of like crosswalk or anything like that, right?
I don't think there's.
Is there a crosswalk even further down?
Probably.
Yeah.
No, but there will be when they extend. Remember how they're putting that intersection where right past Vintage, that street comes out?
Yeah.
That will eventually be an intersection there as well. with a
Okay.
Crosswalk.
So, yeah, because that's my concern is if people are going to Vintage or, you know,
Right.
something like that, and crossing the street to come here. But if that's going to be part of that master plan with Mayfield.
But I'm saying it would be further down by where Go is.
Mhm.
It would be down there. And then there's one by Westminster,
Oh,
which is a lot further down.
okay.
Um,
Okay. What else? So trees on slope, trees and light spacing mimic across the street, buffer north and south vegetation, a view of that, explore detention volume, possible more drains to capture rain, and then look into street parking along Broadwell.
Because I will say about street parking, one last thing is there are so many studies that show that it does tend to slow traffic or slow the street down a little bit, which speeding right there is horrible. You know, if
Yeah.
you've had kids play at Vintage outside, it's like a freeway, you know.
Parallel parking.
Yes, so the addition of parallel street parking would, they say,
Slow it down.
studies slow down the speeding.
Okay. Anything else?
Was there anything with the alleys with like speed bumps or any type of like speed deterrent? Did they call that out any
Behind?
where the alleys are?
I mean, I think we're looking at it in,
Is it stop at the end or is it going to eventually keep going? South side?
Right here.
oh, it's just,
If I remember correctly, there's an immediate curve. A long time ago, I saw a plan for it. There's like an immediate curve.
yeah.
It's not like a throughway.
I would say that because of the close proximity of the driveways of the single family and then basically those stairs coming down from the townhomes right to the edge of the alleyway.
You would hope that they would.
Yeah,
fall
anyone
down there.
speeding down in there
Yeah.
is taking their life in their own hands.
Yeah.
But by putting a speed bump there, imagine.
No, you're like
Yeah.
trying to get back.
Plus
out.
also too is from my experience, is the speed bumps too really become an issue with drainage.
No.
I
We
mean,
don't need that.
slows water, it creates more dam and buildup and stuff like that. So. Okay. Feel comfortable with these? Yes? Okay. All right, so thank you everyone too for tonight. So I think, you know, just from what we've seen and you know, this is being approved already, but us kind of adding our 2 cents and trying to make this obviously a better development for the city of Milton and its citizens. I would make a motion to try to implement some recommendations for the final review when this comes back. First being the trees on slope, just make sure that we identify the species of trees, which I believe is magnolia is good. If there's not a planting diagram for planting on a slope, we'd like to see that. To assure that the trees and the lights, not only the species and the lights themselves, but then also the spacing mimics across the street. To explore vegetative buffer on both the north and south, and maybe have kind of a view with that. So maybe we can look at that as well when the building comes back also. But just something to soften up that as we're driving up and down Broadwell and then for the adjacent neighbors as well. Just re-explore the detention and volume, just make sure that, you know, everything is, which I'm assuming it is capturing the volume of water for the development itself as far as the impervious. And if there's a possibility for more drains to capture. And then last would be to explore possible street parking along Broadwell, just to add a couple additional spaces, excuse me, to the development. And with that, I will make a motion.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion for the recommendations as proposed and a second. All those in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. Okay. Great. Thank you, everyone, for your time. We will move on tonight. I'm sorry. Seeing we have no other business tonight, I will call for a motion for adjournment.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.